The lives of prisoners with serious health conditions are being put at risk during the outbreak, according to their families. More than 4,000 inmates were identified as eligible for temporary release, many who were coming towards the end of their sentence, but some on health grounds. So far, fewer than 100 have been released from jail, and only 7 have been released on the grounds of being medically extremely vulnerable. Rachel Stonehouse reports.
Release my son to protect his life. That's what I'm asking for. Who's not going to ask for that?
Angela is a mum who desperately wants to be allowed to care for her son. But 35-year-old Dwight Monfries-Jones is currently serving a 12-year sentence for drug-related offences at Guy's Marsh, a low-risk prison. He has sickle cell anemia, a blood disorder, which means he's classed as medically vulnerable. But his application for temporary release was rejected on the basis he hasn't served enough of his sentence.
Some people would say that he's in prison and he should serve his sentence. Why should he be released?
I'm not asking for Dwight to be released permanently. Do you understand? We have a pandemic going on that everybody is scared of. And Dwight has an illness to deal with. And I'm asking him to be temporary released to me, to keep him safe until it's over, and then he can go back and finish his sentence.
Angela says the conditions in prison make it impossible for him to shield safely, and he's appealing the decision on health grounds.
It is life-threatening because the conditions that he's under now without having much exercise means that his circulation is reduced. The stress levels now mentally and physically will affect his body, so he might have not severe crises but more frequent crises.
More than 4,000 prisoners have been identified as eligible for temporary release because of the coronavirus outbreak, but only 7 have been on the grounds they're extremely vulnerable.
I've spoken to a number of other families of prisoners who've applied for temporary release on health grounds. Many of them say they haven't even had a response yet, and their families are concerned that every extra day they spend in prison puts their lives at risk.
I think that it's even more important that these initial decisions, whether it's a yes or a no, the initial determination is given within a matter of weeks, because it's the appeal process thereafter has to be followed as well, doesn't it? For people who are vulnerable, we're not talking about just general release of prisoners. We're talking about people with serious conditions.
In response, the Ministry of Justice says protecting the general public is its first priority, and it makes no apology for doing so. It also says the measures in place in prisons are working. But for Angela, every day that goes by, the worry for her son consumes her life.
It's just not fair. He's not an animal. He's a human being trying to protect himself and save his own life. And I'm going to help him to do that.
Rachel Stonehouse, BBC News.
Let's talk now to Laura Orger, who is a solicitor for the Prisoners Advice Service. She says the service is in touch with hundreds of inmates who believe they are eligible for release, but says applications are being processed really slowly. Hello to you. Tell us more about the kind of issues that families are coming across.
Well, at the Prisoners Advice Service, we're receiving hundreds of phone calls a week from prisoners with severe health conditions in custody. We're receiving lots of emails from their family members who are intensely distressed. They've been making applications, in some cases since early April, to be considered for temporary release on special purpose licence because they've got life-threatening health conditions, respiratory conditions, terminal illnesses. And in many cases, they're not getting any response at all. We are often not getting any response at all when we write letters or emails or ring the prisons. And when there are responses, they've been universally negative.
In Dwight Monfries-Jones's case, his application was rejected on the grounds that he hadn't served enough of his sentence. Is that fair enough?
Well, I can understand the concerns of people on long sentences, and that's why those people aren't eligible for release. They're not eligible for early release. This is just a temporary release on licence. So in Dwight's case, he's in a closed prison. But we're in contact with lots of prisoners who are in open conditions. They're going out to work every day until the coronavirus, visiting family members. They're really on the cusp of their release. Some people are due to release in a couple of months. And so they obviously can't be high risk, otherwise they wouldn't be out mixing with the public. But now all their temporary releases are suspended. They've had negative decisions for the COVID early release scheme. And it just seems something of a farce. I mean, why have a policy and then not apply it?
So if it's for temporary release, that's justification of he hasn't served enough of his sentence, does that make sense to you?
Not really. If it were permanent release, I would think absolutely. The person must serve the punishment that's been imposed by the courts. But if it's temporary release, being monitored by probation, and the person has a serious medical condition, it's hard to see that public protection is a justification for that.
Well, that's what they say. And they say the Ministry of Justice says, as you heard in Rachel's report, protecting the public is the #1 priority. We're not going to apologise for that, irrespective of health grounds.
Yeah. Well, I too am a member of the public, and obviously public protection is important and it should be the primary consideration, but it shouldn't be the only consideration. A prison sentence should be a prison sentence and not a death sentence.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thanks for talking to us. Laura Orger, who is a solicitor for the Prisoners Advice Service.